All right, we are starting a new unit, and our first lesson of this unit is on ratios. A ratio is a comparison of two quantities. A ratio is always going to be a number compared to another number. And as you look, if you look at the notes that you should have printed out in front of you or copied down in front of you, you can see the examples. Ratios can be written a couple different ways. They can be written with a colon, so 5:3. That would be comparing 5 to 3, whatever we might be talking about. It also could be written literally with the word 2 in there, 5 to 3. That's also a ratio. And then it could also be written as a fraction, 5/3. All of those are different ways to write ratios. A ratio is always going to have two numbers. Always needs to have two numbers. So let me erase that, and let's get started with our first example here. So in this example, you can see my beautiful drawing. You should have that in your notes there. You can see that there's a bunch of circles, a bunch of squares, and a bunch of clouds. And we're asked to write ratios of different comparisons. So number one is asking us to write a ratio of circles to clouds. We're comparing the number of circles to the number of clouds. So I dropped my marker. All we got to do is count the number of circles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 circles. We count the number of squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So our ratio is 7 circles to 5 squares. And it needs to be in that order. Since circles was first, the number of circles needs to be first. Since squares was second, the number of squares needs to be second. So let's look at circles to clouds, number 2. So circles, again, we counted already. There were 7 circles. There's 3 clouds. So it's 7 to 3. As you can see, this isn't really too challenging. I mean, the main skill you need to have is being able to count. So you can see we're just counting up the number of them. So it's clouds to circles now. That you can see number 2 and 3 are almost the same thing. They're just written in reverse. And our answer is going to be in reverse because there's 3 clouds and there's 7 circles. So this one's 3 to 7. So when you write a ratio, there's no rule that says the first number needs to be bigger or the second number needs to be bigger, anything like that. It's just however it turns out. So let's look at example 4. Circles to all figures. So we know there's 7 circles. We already counted those. All figures means everything that's there. So there's 7, including the circles. You're going to count those up as well. There's 7 circles plus 5 squares, that's 12. Plus 3 clouds is 15. So there's 15 total figures. So it's going to be 7 to 15. So when it says all figures, I include the circles as well in that. So what about clouds to all figures? So clouds to all figures is there's 3 clouds. And then we know there's 15 total figures because we already counted those up. One thing with ratios, similar to fractions, they can be simplified. So 3 to 15, if you think of it like as a fraction, 3/15, we could simplify. If I divided both of those by 3, I'm kind of out of room here, that would be 1 to 5. So that, if you can simplify a ratio, you need to do it. So the clouds to all figures is 1 cloud to 5 figures. All figures to squares. So all figures, we know there's 15. We already did that. We counted those up. Squares, there's 5. You can see we got another one that can be simplified. Hopefully you can just recognize we simplified fractions already this year. So 15 to 5, I look at those. Both of those can be divided by 5. And if I do that, that simplifies to 3 to 1. So the ratio of all figures to clouds, for every 3 figures, there's 1 cloud. All right, last one, squares to all figures. So this is actually just the one we did in reverse. There's 5 squares. There's 15 total figures. And that one simplified divided by 5 would be 1 to 3. So ratios is just, you count up whatever it is or whatever the question is. You figure out how many circles there are, you figure out how many squares there are, and you compare the two. It's always, I think the easiest way is to write it with a colon. That's normally how I'll do it. You could put it as a fraction or put it with the word 2 in between the numbers, but typically we write them with a colon. So this was example 1. I'll have one more video on example 2.